If you've been around these parts long enough, you'll probably know that Budokai 2 is somewhat considered the black sheep of the original Budokai trilogy.
Could you stop doing that? Could you stop doing that, please?
So much so that it was left out of the HD re-release in 2012. Although it was never my game of choice when picking a DBZ game, I definitely don't remember it being a bad game. It added a lot to the series and improved on its predecessor in many aspects. I think where the problem lies with this game, at least for me, is that it doesn't really excel at anything. And then there was the story mode, which was my least favourite out of the three by far. You play Budokai 1 for the story mode and Budokai 3 for everything else. But it has been many years since I've played Budokai 2, so is it really the black sheep of the series? Let's find out together. Ghost, stop eating that. Have you ever gone back to a game that you used to love and realised that it wasn't actually that good? Or replayed a game that you used to hate but found out that it was a lot better than you remember? Well, in this series I'm going to be revisiting some games from my past and seeing whether or not they are as good or as bad as I remember. This is what we had to play. Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2 is a fighting game developed by Dimps, the same developers of Budokai 1. It was released in 2003 for the PlayStation 2. The GameCube version was released over a year later for all regions except for Japan, with the original Xbox once again missing out. Despite the fact that Japan did not receive a GameCube version, the European GameCube version included the Japanese voiceover. The year between releases allowed the GameCube version to have slightly enhanced graphics, more difficulty options, and new costumes. For this retrospective though, we'll be playing through the version that I played as a kid, and that is the PlayStation 2 version. So, let us begin. The game begins with a stunningly animated intro. Even today the 2D animation looks wonderful. It depicts the fights of all the series' major villains. I particularly like the representation of the Buu fight. It portrays the battle on a massive scale that the anime never fully achieves. It also includes several of this entry's new characters, such as Goten and Kid Trunks, as well as the fusion ability. It's a terrific method to show the player what they can anticipate in the game in an entertaining way without giving away everything. The music is well synced with the visuals and is energetic, which will get you geared up for the game. This opening is fantastic, yet it does have its quirks. The characters look slightly off model somehow. It's hard to place. I guess it's more that the art style looks closer to Dragon Ball Super than to Dragon Ball Z, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, just different. There is also the case of Vegeta's brown hair, which seems to pop up from time to time, and then Goten's ankle bands that change colour between shots. Now these things do not matter at all, I just thought they were kinda interesting. One of the most noticeable improvements Budokai 2 makes over the first game is the graphics. The GameCube release of Budokai 1 attempted to emulate a cel shading style, but because that game wasn't built from the ground up with that style in mind, it wasn't really able to achieve it. Budokai 2 did, however, succeed where its predecessor did not. The cel shading looks incredibly crisp and vibrant. It's the perfect style for this game, and I'm glad that they adjusted their approach to 3D model designs to have sharper features and lines. The characters look extremely close to their anime and manga counterparts, apart from the faces. They look bad and the shading on them is too dark. Also, Piccolo looks like he has no pupils in the character select screen, and his skin colour looks too dark of green, although I do kind of like the way he looks. Ki blasts have been enhanced. They are much more bright and have better coloration. They don't quite live up to the spectacle of the anime or Budokai 3, but it's a huge improvement over the original. Although the Ki blasts improved significantly, the same cannot be said about the auras. They still look way too faint. They're quite difficult to see, and the same issue I had with them in the first game persists in this game. Once again, the main issue is with the transformations. They just don't feel as powerful as they should due to the lack of a striking aura. The problem with the Kaioken remains. Other than the portrait, it's impossible to discern when Goku is in this state. It's a shame that this wasn't addressed because it actually does have a negative effect on the gameplay. The stages look fantastic as well. They're quite simple, which works in the game's favour because it allows the characters to stand out from their environment. The Snowy Mountain stage is my favourite since it has a really stunning snow effect. I'm not a fan of how the HUD looks. This may sound strange, but I believe it looks too cartoony. Yeah, Dragon Ball Z is technically a cartoon, and Budokai 2 is striving to mimic its style, but this health bar is out of place. It displays the information clearly and cleanly, but the aesthetic is simply incorrect.
No, it's fine, it doesn't bother me, it bothers me a lot.
All the menus in this game are really boring. They're so plain compared to Budokai 1's awesome manga-inspired menus. It almost looks unfinished, like this is a placeholder until the real one's done, but it never got done. The music is awesome. It carries over a few tracks from Budokai 1, but also adds in many great tracks of its own. It amps up the action and gives the Budokai series a distinct flair. It is extremely nostalgic, at least for me anyway, because I am old. Unlike in Budokai 1, where the game's mechanics are slowly introduced and taught to the player as they progress through the story mode, Budokai 2 has its own dedicated tutorial mode. It's framed as a training session between Goten and various other Z fighters. Each fighter will explain the actions and then have Goten perform said actions. When they are performed correctly, the tutorial moves on. It is separated into chapters with a brief explanation of what would be taught in each chapter. It's very simple, yet very effective. The actions are clearly defined and the controls are located at the bottom of the screen, making it very clear which button performs what. When you are prompted to do a combo, it will be presented at the bottom as well. It does an excellent job of introducing new players to the game's controls and mechanics, while also serving as a great refresher for experienced players. While I did like how Budokai 1 integrated the tutorial into the story mode, it does make the first few fights a little tedious and boring. I believe Budokai 2's method is far superior because it provides more guidance for those who require it and can be fully avoided by those who do not. The controls are fairly similar to the previous title. You can punch, kick, guard and throw ki blasts. By performing these actions in a sequence, you can execute combos. You can also deflect basic ki blasts if you can get the timing right. One of the best changes they made was making the grab a part of a character's basic move set, thank God. They also made it so if you want to perform a finishing move, such as the Kamehameha, you don't need to throw a few punches in order to do so. This makes doing ranged attacks way less awkward. You can manually charge your ki gauge, allowing you to unleash additional ki blasts and perform powerful finishing moves. These are characters' ultimate attacks. They are more powerful and can be charged by rotating the analog stick. Unfortunately, there are only a few variations of this technique, so expect to see numerous characters use the same animations. To dodge attacks or to get behind your opponent, you can strafe forward and back between planes. Dashing forward can be used to close in on your opponent and to also perform a dash attack to break their guard. Strangely, you cannot dash backwards, which is a kind of weird omission. Burst mode makes a return, and I'm pretty sure it's worse in this game. Or maybe I'm just really bad at them. It's a mystery. Not really. When both sides collide, burst mode is activated. In order to win the battle, you must rapidly press buttons, but I swear this doesn't work half the time. It can't be me, it has to be the game. I was pressing them so quickly, like two-handing the buttons, and I don't think I ever won one. Not once. There is no indication of how well you're doing. All you can do is mash buttons and hope you're doing enough. Fortunately, for me. They don't happen very often, so you can get through the fights without mastering burst limit. Transformations have returned, and thankfully they are considerably more manageable this time. They don't deplete your ki as much as they did in the first game, so you can utilize them without jeopardizing your ability to perform special attacks. Strangely enough, they omitted the inclusion of Frieza and Cell's various forms, and only features Cell's perfect form and Frieza's final form. Well, I guess it's not entirely true. There is Mecha Frieza that you can unlock. But other than that, the other ones are not in the game. That's weird. Newly added to the series is the ability to perform fusions. There are two types of fusions in the game. Fusion Dance is a temporary fusion that can be performed during a fight by launching your opponent into the air and successfully following the button prompts. If the transformation is successful, the ki gauge is replaced with a timer. When in this form, you have unlimited ki until the timer runs out and the fusion will end. If you mess up the button prompts, the fusion will result in this.
All right.
Oh my god. What the fuck is that?
When in this state, your attacks are way less effective. The timer does run down a lot faster though, so the game does show you some mercy. I really love this little addition, and it really sucks that they took it out of Budokai 3. It is quite punishing, but it's also really funny, so I consider that a fair trade. Potara fusions are more permanent. After launching your opponent into the air, you must hit a button. If your opponent hits a different button than you, the fusion will be successful. Unlike the other fusions, you retain your ki gauge and remain fused until the end of the fight. The game features the canon fusions such as Gotenks, Vegito, and Kabito Kai, but it also features a couple of what-if fusions. Tien Chi is the fusion of Tien and Yamcha. Then there's Goku, which is the fusion of Goku and Hercule.
Oh man! Oh no!
Depending on which outfits you choose, Goku will actually have two completely different physical forms.
Oh man! Oh no!
Now I'm not really sure if this counts as a fusion or a transformation, but there's also Buu absorptions. In Budokai 2, Super Buu has an ability called Absorption that allows you to absorb a character other than your opponent during the battle. Buu can absorb 6 different characters: Tien and Yamcha, Gohan, Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks, Frieza, Cell, and Vegeta. Depending on the character he has absorbed will change his special attack. Budokai 2 contains a ton of new features and improves on the gameplay of Budokai 1. The changes are immediately noticeable as you have more options in a fight and your movement is much smoother. However, it still has a few flaws, such as the tedious button combinations and button mashing attacks that tend to dominate the combat. Budokai 2's combat is undeniably superior to its predecessor, but what about its game modes? Budokai 2's story mode is called Dragon World, and it is the worst story mode in the trilogy by far. It's not even close.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
While Budokai 1 was a very cinematic affair, with a lot of cutscenes retelling the story, and Budokai 3 being more focused on adventure with an overworld map, Budokai 2 decides to go with a board game. It's a strange choice, and while the board game setup isn't necessarily a bad idea, the way it was executed is. After selecting Dragon World mode, you will be launched into an intro telling about Goku and his quest for the Dragon Balls, and then the first stage begins. 2 Saiyan spaceships will crash into Earth, with Nappa and Raditz disembarking. Those familiar with the Dragon Ball Z story are probably confused, as Nappa doesn't arrive on Earth until a full year after Raditz.
Hi.
Well, don't expect Budokai 2 to faithfully follow the Dragon Ball Z story, because there is a lot of situations like this. This is an interesting concept, as it allows the game to have some freedom in telling the story in a unique way. Budokai 1 also had a similar thing with its what-if scenarios. Unfortunately, the game does nothing with this. In fact, it does almost nothing with the story at all. Many of the iconic moments from the series are missing, like Piccolo and Goku teaming up against Raditz, gone. Goku's first transformation into Super Saiyan, Vegeta and Goku's showdown, nope. One of the main reasons that this is the worst story mode in the series is simply because it doesn't really tell a story. Yes, it does have small character interactions, but they are very brief and the animations are very bland and are mostly just characters cycling through poses while talking. Whereas with Budokai 1 you could follow the story fairly well even if you weren't that familiar with the source material. With Budokai 2 however, you have no chance. Good luck with that.
Come eat that horse with me, Vegeta.
What the hell are you on about?
Even I got confused at what was even going on. For instance, when entering the second stage, you're placed on a board with a snowy background and Frieza is there in his final form with Captain Ginyu and it's like, what?
Alright, I have already lost the plot completely.
There's so much wrong with this, but the game never addresses it at all. This is not another planet, this is on Earth, as you can see a crashed Red Ribbon Army plane in the background. This is such a missed opportunity. The whole story mode could have been made up of interesting what-if scenarios, but instead we get this. We have Frieza on Earth for some reason. It's never brought up by any other characters, the game never tries to explain it. He's just there and you fight him and that's it. Shit. So we have established that the story presentation is abysmal, but this isn't even the worst thing about the story mode. No, that would be the tedium of it all. Dragon World is designed to be played through multiple times if you want to unlock everything. This is not the issue as there are many games that do this and it can be really fun to go through a game again once you have mastered the mechanics. The issue comes from the mode structure. You control Goku and one or two other characters whom you choose as your partner at the beginning of a stage. You are on a board that has many spaces and green lines. You move your characters along the green lines to the spaces. There are also pieces for your enemies as well. When it's your turn, you select one of your characters and move them to another spot. Your main goal is usually to defeat a specific enemy. When you and your enemy meet up on the same space, you go into a fight. In order to eliminate an enemy from the board, you must fight them multiple times. This is so tedious. Sometimes you have to fight the same opponent 4 or 5 times. Both Frieza and Cell are reused so much throughout this mode that they become so annoying to face that you actively try to avoid interacting with them because you've fought them so much. And it really feels like
Does that mean I win?
Yes! Yes! You win!
What do I win?
yeah, so in case it wasn't clear, I'm not exactly a fan of this mode. That's an understatement. But it's not all bad. You can pick up items that will improve your character's stats during the stage to help speed up the fights. The daggers will increase a character's attack by 10 to 40%. A high attack means you are able to inflict more damage in battles. And picking up armor will receive a defense boost ranging from 10 to 30%.
Hey, look, Vegeta! I'm you! Paragon till death!
You ruined it. You ruined it and I'm leaving.
A higher defense means that you will take less damage from attacks. You also get a boost when you land on the same space as one of your allies, but I'm not really sure what stat is getting boosted exactly because it's not really that clear.
Wow, you guys sure got strong, huh?
That's right, Kakarot. And you wouldn't believe just how much. You see, while I was training in the depths of the hyperbolic time chamber, I looked deep within myself and blah 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 pride, blah blah prince of all blah 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 Super Saiyan, blah blah blah.
Zenny can also be found on the board. This is the game's currency, which can be used to purchase new skill capsules in the skills shop. Capsules can also be found on the boards. The capsule system works pretty much the same as it did in Budokai 1. You can equip up to 7 capsules to a character, each of which grants them the power to perform specific attacks and transformations. There are other capsules that offer specialized buffs and debuffs, such as the Heart Virus capsule, which constantly drains the health of a character who has the capsule equipped. However, not all capsules are created equal, since some will occupy more than one slot, and certain capsules can only be equipped by certain characters. The capsule system can be inconvenient. It's nice that you can customize each character to fit your playstyle, but the limited slot count gives little room for special moves, especially if you wish to use transformations. To utilize Super Saiyan 3 for example, you must first equip Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan 2. That's 3 of the 7 slots already taken. Yet there is a workaround, and that is the Breakthrough Capsules. In the Budokai series, the Breakthrough Capsules is a special item that allows the equipped character to use all of their moves during a fight. The only disadvantage is that it takes up all 7 slots, preventing you from equipping buffing or debuffing capsules. You must wish for these capsules from Shenron in order to get them. To summon Shenron though, we must first collect all 7 Dragon Balls. And how can we achieve this? It's actually fairly simple, but also not at the same time. The first Dragon Ball is always in the same location. However, later on you can pick up the Dragon Radar, which will indicate to you which space the Dragon Ball is in. So you navigate to that location and discover that there is nothing there. That's because you have to dig for it, but the game does a terrible job of informing the player of this. The only way to find out is to wait for the control explanation to appear. There it is. It wouldn't surprise me if someone played through the entire story mode without realizing you could do this. When digging, you can find more than just Dragon Balls. Onions are occasionally found. If you dig it up, the character who discovers it will gain an extra move for the rest of the stage. As an example, Gohan only has 1 move limit, therefore he can only move 1 space. He'll be able to move 2 spaces per turn with the onion. You can also dig up Zenny, attack boosts and defense boosts. Keep in mind that all of these items that I've talked about can also be picked up by your opponents. So you need to work around their board movements in order to make sure you get the items you want. Besides items, you'll also see red spaces with symbols, which symbolize special battle conditions you will face if you fight there. There are 5 different types of spaces. On the half health space, your health gauge and your enemy's health gauge will start at half of their normal. On the drain heart space, both fighters' health will constantly decrease during the battle. The no blocking means your ability to guard is disabled. 0 key space means you'll start with 0 key. You can still power up to restore it. On the drain key space, it means your key will be constantly drained even if you aren't transformed. These spaces can add some variety to the gameplay, but because they affect both you and your opponent, they don't add much of a challenge. Maybe if it was only applied to one side, it would be more worth trying to land on them. Mr. Popo is a teleport space that will send you to a predetermined space on the board.
Nobody is thankful, there are no days off, and no one ever visits.
And finally, there is Dende spaces.
Ball.
Is this a dragon? What's it?
Where am I? Who are you? Where's my family?
Hey.
Each fighter has 5 green blocks next to them that reflect his or her health. If the boxes are dark green, it means that they are empty. To fill the boxes, go to Dende space, which will restore 1 bar for you. Goku will always begin the stage with 3 HP, and will have a maximum of 5. If you win a fight, your opponent loses 1 HP. If you win and your opponent does not lose all of their health, a dazed symbol will appear above them. If you defeat them again while the symbol is there, they will lose 2 HP instead of just 1. However, if you lose a fight, you'll be knocked back a space and lose 1 HP. And when you refight that opponent again, their health will be reduced to the nearest gauge that you drop them down to, making them easier to take out. This is kind of unfair because that's not what happens to you. You always start with full health, unless you're on a half health space. We've gone over most of the board's mechanics, but there's still the question of how do we unlock characters, because there are quite a few to unlock. And that's where picking your partner on the board becomes very, very important. In order to unlock certain characters, for example Raditz, he must be defeated by Goku. Defeating him with any other character will not unlock him. You can also unlock Nappa in the first stage, but only by defeating him with Vegeta. Vegeta, on the other hand, cannot be unlocked until stage 3. As a result, unlocking Nappa on your first playthrough is impossible. This is why Dragon World must be played multiple times in order to unlock everything. Some are really obvious, like Goku defeating Frieza unlocks him, but others are a little more obscure and annoying. To unlock the Great Saiyaman, you must only fight Cell as Gohan. If any other character fights him, then too bad, you won't unlock him. You'll have to restart the stage. This is the most tedious part of the mode. Going through the same fights over and over just so you can get the characters that you want. Some stages, especially the later ones, really start to drag out, with a heap of Cybermen and Cell Juniors littering the board. You have to power your way through them just to advance. It's not like they're challenging in any way. Well, maybe I guess to my patience. The Cybermen only sport 1 health bar each. They're just there to pad out the gameplay to waste your time. To complete Dragon World, you must play through 9 stages. It covers all of the sagas, including the Buu saga. Each stage has its own objective for you to complete in order to progress. Most of the time, just requires you to defeat a certain enemy on the board. Most of the fights aren't that hard, but there is a noticeable difficulty spike when you fight Kid Buu. He is like on drugs or something. It's like, Jesus Christ. Like I said before, Budokai 2's story mode is my least favourite in the series. The health system really brings down the pacing, making you have to face off against the same character multiple times in a row. It definitely has a lot of replayability, but when it's repeated playthroughs that I don't really enjoy, it's hard to hold this point in the game's favour. Babidi's fate spit. Babidi's spaceship is unlocked by collecting 7 Dragon Balls and wishing for it from Shenron. It's a mode that consists of 4 different fighting themed minigames. As you play the minigames, you'll earn Killy, which will be added up after each game. Once you reach a certain amount, you'll be awarded either capsules or characters. In stage 1, you will select a character and the opponent to face. The aim here is to fight your opponent, but he will only have 1 health gauge, and if you defeat him, Babidi will revive him. Essentially, it's an endurance test in which you try to defeat your opponent as many times as you can before he defeats you. The more you knock out, the more Killy you will earn. For stage 2, you just have to try and stay alive for as long as possible by guarding and dodging your opponent's attacks. In stage 3, your goal is to land as many hits on your opponent as possible before the time runs out. The more hits you get, the more Killy you gain. Finally, stage 4 requires you to volley as many ki blasts as you can within the time limit. If you're just attempting to unlock everything as quickly as possible, this is the stage that you want to play because it awards the most Killy. The addition of Babidi's spaceship is fantastic. The minigames are entertaining and provide a welcome change of pace to the gameplay without deviating too far from the core mechanics. The dueling mode is fairly standard. It allows you to compete against the computer or against another player using any custom skills. If you like, you can also watch a fight between 2 computer-controlled characters, but I'm not sure why you'd want to, but you can. An improved version of the World Tournament mode returns for Budokai 2. We have the 3 basic modes of Novice, Adept and Expert, each having progressively more rounds. You can win matches by knocking your opponent out of the ring or lowering their health to 0. The ring is a bit bigger in this game, making the threat of ring outs not as daunting. Tournaments are the best way to earn Zenny. Winning a tournament or coming runner-up will award you with a bunch of Zenny to spend at the skills shop. They kept the practice mode from the first game and it's still really good. You can pretty much set up a battle any way you like, all from the menu. You may even tell the computer if you want it to fight back or not. A window at the bottom of the screen displays the buttons you just pressed. Very useful for memorizing and learning the timing of specific combinations of attacks. You can also practice against a friend if you have a second controller and a friend.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2 was always my least favourite of the original trilogy, and after playing it again after all these years, it still is. If I were judging this game on the gameplay alone, Budokai 2 is far superior to that of Budokai 1. It improves practically every aspect of the controls and fighting mechanics. The new improvements all work well and contribute to the overall quality of the gameplay. It includes a ton of extra characters and fusions to unlock that any Dragon Ball Z fan would love. The visuals are stunning and accurately emulate the style of the Dragon Ball Z anime. The story mode, on the other hand, really drags the game down. It doesn't have the same amount of care as the first installment. It feels rushed and extremely repetitive. Every family has its black sheep, and for this series, it's Budokai 2. This game is kind of weird, and not always in a good way.
Could you stop doing that? Could you stop doing that, please? That's actually quite scary.
Hello, thanks for watching to the end. I also have a Budokai 3 retrospective you can watch, and I have other retrospectives on my channel if you'd like to check any of them out. Thanks again for watching, and bye.